politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. The Week magazine, citing an account in Dawn, reports that India could have lost 6 Air Force planes in Operation Sindoor. They are said to be 3 Rafale, 1 Mirage 2000, 1 Sukhoi 30, and 1 MiG-29. It's claimed they were downed by the Pakistani Air Force flying Chinese-made J10C planes and using Chinese-made PL-15 beyond visual range missiles. So the first key question we ask today is, how should we respond to these reports? Second, whilst the Chief of Defence Staff says numbers are not important, would he not have stated the number if that were actually the case, rather than hide it? Third, does the loss of planes suggest there are key lessons the Indian Air Force needs to urgently learn? Those are the issues I shall raise today with the editor of Force magazine, Pravin Sawhney. Mr. Sawhney, Dawn newspaper has published an article by Bakir Sajjad Syed claiming that on the 7th of May, the 15th Squadron of the Pakistan Air Force, popularly known as the Cobras, shot down 6 Indian Air Force planes. This report has also been cited by the Week magazine in India. Do you believe this report is accurate?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Karan, for having me on your program. Now, you see, even I've heard from multiple sources that India lost 5 or 6 jets. Most people have said 6 jets. But as we all are aware, the Chief of Defence Staff, he has said very categorically that this number of 6 jets is absolutely incorrect. So I have no problem in accepting his version, but I would rather request him also that he answer one of the questions, the key question that many people have asked, to an extraordinary statement that he has made. And that statement of General Chauhan is that he says that we understood the tactical mistake, rectified it, and after 2 days flew our jets again targeting at long range. Now, why I say this is extraordinary is that is the chief saying, the Chief of Defence Staff saying that for 2 days, the Indian Air Force was partially or fully, it was grounded. It's a very serious thing. Or is he saying that for duration, the 2 days duration, the top security team of the government, it was completely stunned into inaction by the results that it saw on the night of 6/7.
But the important part of your answer is that you believe at least 5 planes were shot down. You are willing to concede that maybe not 6, but at least 5 you believe were shot down.
Yes, see, this is what I have heard from multiple sources, and I have no reasons really to disbelieve some of those sources that this is perhaps the case. But now, again, let me emphasize, sorry.
No, please carry on.
No, let me emphasize here that just because the CDS has not given out the exact number, all these things will run wild. And I think it's about time, it's been more than a month, that the government, somebody from the government should come out with these numbers. And the reason is very simple. Between India and Pakistan, as I have maintained, the two air forces will lead the next war. So we should
Okay.
know what happened.
Now, Dawn also claims, and again, the Week magazine repeats, that the 6 Indian Air Force planes that were shot down are said to be 3 Rafale, one MiG 29, one Mirage 2000, and one Sukhoi 30. To the best of your knowledge, how accurate is this?
See, I can't honestly say that if the breakdown is correct, but I can what certainly say is that as far as the Pakistan Air Force is concerned, their focus would be the Rafale for the simple reason that this was a top line aircraft of the Indian Air Force. It is a 4.5 generation aircraft and it has seen combat for 20 years. So obviously, this was their focus, and we can make it out from the fact that on the morning of the 8th, the stock of the Dassault Aviation, which are the manufacturers of the Rafale plane, that drastically came down. And then there's been a French officer who also on record said that perhaps one Rafale has been shot down. So the point is, if it was only one aircraft, I have reasons to believe that the government would say that it is one aircraft. So obviously the numbers are more.
So, your inclination is to accept that figure of 3 Rafale. Have I understood you correctly?
No, I'm not saying three Rafale. I have said that I have heard from multiple sources it is not three, that it is five or six, and many have said six. So this is what I have heard from many sources.
Absolutely. But within that overall figure of 5 or 6 planes, are you inclined to accept that 3 could be Rafale?
No, I'm not saying that. I said certainly one is Rafale because the French intelligence officer has said so himself. One is certainly Rafale, and the second point I'm making is that as far as the Pakistan Air Force is concerned, their focus would have been Rafale. That is what they would have targeted. It's very obvious.
So there could be more Rafale than just one.
Yes, they could be. Absolutely.
And it could also be the case that in addition to the Rafale, there is a MiG 29, a Mirage 2000, and possibly a Sukhoi 30. That's also possible.
See, anything is possible, but I can't give the breakdown. It is for the government to say that.
Now, again, Dawn claims, and once again, the Week in India repeats, that these planes were shot down by the Pakistan Air Force using Chinese-made PL-15 beyond visual range missiles fired from Chinese-made J10C planes. Do you believe that's accurate?
See, what I can certainly say is that this combination of J10 and PL-15 is a good combination. There's no doubt about it. And the proof of that is that as far as J10 is concerned, their manufacturers, Chengdu Aerospace Corporation, its stock went up. Now there are reports that Indonesia wants to buy these J10s. And we also know that the Pakistanis are getting the next generation, which is the fifth generation plane of the Chengdu, Aerospace Corporation, which is the J35A. And let me tell your viewers a very interesting thing. It is not only they are just getting the J35A, they are getting a lethal combination, which is what many Chinese analysts have called an integrated air defense trinity. And that comprises of the J35A, the HQ-19, which is the Integrated Air and Missile Defense System, and the KJ-500, which is the Airborne Early Warning System. So you see, when you put all these things together, you are talking of an air superiority at an extreme high level. That is what they are
Now,
getting.
if I understand your answer correctly, and I'm simply repeating it so there's clarity, you can't confirm that these 5 or 6 Indian Air Force planes were shot down using either the Chinese-made J10C plane or the Chinese-made PL-15 beyond visual range missiles, but the combination of the two you believe is very effective and powerful, and therefore it's quite possible that it was the combination of the two that brought the Indian planes down. That we can't rule out. It's quite possible, in fact.
See, possibilities and speculations will be there, but the point to make is that this combination is lethal. This is what this is my understanding of what happened on the night of 6/7, that this is a lethal combination, and which is why Now the Pakistan Air Force is going for the next generation, which is the fifth generation aircraft. As I said, getting a lethal combination now.
If this combination of the J10C plane and the PL-15 beyond visual range missile is lethal, and you use that word lethal 4 or 5 times, is it more lethal than any combination we have on our side?
No, you see, again, it is the not the plane and the missile. It is much more than that. It is, as I have maintained, it is a digital ecosystem that is backing it. We have to keep in mind, so there are plenty of things here involved. There is a digital ecosystem, there is the fighter jet, there is the missile, then there is electronic warfare, and then there is a lot of training. Please don't miss the last part, training. So it is this combination that becomes lethal. When I talk of only the fighter and the missile, I'm actually referring to one part, the part that is seen. But there is so much which is happening behind this part, which is really pushing or making this combination lethal.
Then let me put this to you. Is the total combination, both that which is seen and that which lies behind, more lethal than what India has?
I see. I don't want to comment on India's system for obvious reasons, but as I am saying again and again, that this combination, something that the Indian Air Force should have been aware of. They should have been aware of that the Pakistan Air Force has been training at least since 5th August 2019 with the PLA Air Force, and they were doing very advanced air exercises. So they should have been aware of. I don't know whether they were aware of or not, but the fact of the matter is that today the Pakistan Air Force, when you look at the entire package, they are, I would call a modern in the modern war, they are one of the good air forces. There's no doubt about it.
Okay. In the modern war, the combination makes the Pakistan Air Force one of the good air forces. As you say, there's no doubt about it. Now, the Dawn report, and this is also true of the version cited by the week, is silent about what happened to the Indian Air Force pilots flying those 5 or 6 planes. In May, and I believe it was the 10th of May or the 11th of May, Air Marshal Bharti said all the pilots are safe. Today, 1 month later, is that still the case? What can you tell me about that?
No, I don't know about that. I mean, I have to go by his word that they are safe. That is all can be said. I mean, unless they say that, well, some have been injured or what have happened, I can't say that.
So you're going by Air Marshal Bharti's word, spoken by him on the 10th or the 11th of May, that all the pilots are safe?
No, I have no choice here. I can't say that whether they are safe or not safe. We have to go by what he's saying here.
Okay, that's a very clear answer. You have no choice. We have to go by what Air Marshal Bharti has said. He has said they are safe, so you are prepared to accept they are safe. Is that right?
Yes. No, well, for the time being, unless we get some more information to the contrary, this is the position.
Now, in the interview he gave Bloomberg Television in Singapore, General Chauhan, the Chief of Defense Staff, said numbers are not important. But if the number is 6 and comprises 3 Rafales, 1 MiG-29, 1 Mirage 2000, and 1 Sukhoi 30, then in that circumstance, is the number important?
See, I completely disagree with the Chief of Defense Staff. Numbers are very, very important, and I'll explain why. The reason is that this shows the preparedness of war, of modern war against Pakistan. Because, as I said, the air forces will be in the lead. So, therefore, it also shows that the earlier time, the first time when the Air Force was used on non-military targets, which was in 2019 at Balakot, there were 2 lessons that should have been learned. And now we saw in Operation Sindoor, both the lessons were not learned, whereas the Pakistan Air Force, they actually went to a much higher level. So what were the lessons? What we noticed was that in 2019, Balakot, Indian Air Force was used for the first time on a non-conventional role. In the sense that was a sub-conventional role, it was used for, those terrorists. It was a sub-conventional role. But at that time, the Pakistan Air Force, when they retaliated the next day with their operation, which is Operation Swift Retort, they used it only on military targets, and we noticed that their electronic warfare was good. So, what were the two things we should have learned? A, not to use the Indian Air Force in subconventional role. It should only be used in a conventional war. And the second was that we needed to improve our electronic warfare. Now, what did we see in Operation Sindoor? That once again, the Indian Air Force has been used in a subconventional role for targeting the terrorist on the night of 6th, 7th. And as far as the Pakistan Air Force is concerned, Karan, this is very important for your viewers. As far as the Pakistan Air Force is concerned, they have taken electronic warfare to an entirely different level. And that level is that not only have they improved the electronic warfare, they have added to that what is called electromagnetic spectrum management system. In very simple term, what it means is that in the atmosphere there are six electromagnetic waves which are indispensable for our living, for all the things we do in the day to day life. For example, one of the waves is light. So as I talk to you, we only can do that if the light is there. So uh, the visible light. So the point to make here is that if you know how to manage those lights, the seven waves, which is collective, they collectively are called the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, if you know how to manage them, then you will also know how to use the unutilized spaces. So the key point here is that as far as the Pakistan Air Force is concerned, they have converted electromagnetic spectrum into a war domain. What that means is that today they have a capability to compete, confront, combat in the electromagnetic spectrum, and the next war will be won or lost depending on what sort of capabilities you have in the electromagnetic spectrum. So this is what we saw in Operation Sindoor. This is my assessment that along with the electronic warfare, they displayed a good sense of electromagnetic spectrum management. So these are the two things we have to learn now, at least as we wait for the next crisis or next war to happen.
And we will only begin to make a credible effort to learn if we accept and admit that we've lost aircraft and reveal how many aircraft we lost. That is critical to the process.
Yeah, I mean that is certainly required. This is something that should be done. It is important, yes.
Now, at this stage, let me ask you, why have you decided to confirm the Dawn report? Why do you believe it's important that the Indian people know the full truth? Because there'll be many in the audience asking that question. So let me, on their behalf, ask you upfront. Why have you decided to confirm the Dawn report? Why do you believe it's important the Indian people know the full truth?
See, Karan, I'm not confirming the Dawn report, but what I certainly believe is that the Indians should know the truth, and there are two reasons for that. Reason number one is all the great powers or the major powers today in the world today. For example, the Americans have what is called the GPS system. The Europeans have what is called the Galileo system. Then the Russians have the GLONASS, which is a satellite constellation, and the Chinese have the Beidou satellite constellation. So all these countries basically know exactly how many jets were lost, what was the issue. In other words, the entire world knows what happened. See, I'll just digress here to make a point. Please recall recently the Ukrainians did a spectacular action in Russia, deep inside Russia. They hit the Russians, basically one of the bombers which are part of their strategic triad, nuclear strategic triad. Now the Russians didn't hide that. They learned the lesson and they retaliated. So the point I'm making is India aspires to be a major power today. If you aspire to be a major power and the world knows what has happened and you hide from your own people the real facts, it doesn't behove good for a major power. And the second reason is as we are aware that because of Operation Sindoor, a new normal has been established. Now, I keep hearing a lot of analysts and experts say that, what we done with Pakistan this time in Sindoor was actually a good thing. We may not have deterred them, but it is like mowing a lawn, so we should keep repeating it. No, you will not get the opportunity to repeat. Next time it will be war. It will be hot war. If it is to be hot war, then the whole nation should know what is our war preparedness. Simple as that. So you see, this is all living in a bubble, not understanding what has happened and what is likely to happen next. So these are the reasons, Karan.
And the most important thing you said, which I'm underlining for the audience, is that because of the superb satellites that they have, the Russians, the Americans, the Chinese know how many planes were lost. They know how they were lost, where they were lost. It's only the Indian people who are being kept in the dark. The rest of the world that matters knows.
You are absolutely right on this, and this is what is troubling. Why should the Indians not know? I mean, we are the people, it's the taxpayers' money which is going into the war preparedness. All right, for whatever reasons, today we are at the edge of war. That is a fact. If that is the fact, then we should know what has happened. I mean, after all, rightly the our government has pointed out what they did on the subsequent days. Well, it is very good. If that is what the fact is, I'm very happy and delighted about it. But as I said, the key to the next war will be the two air forces. You see, therefore, it is also important to know what happened on the night of 6th, 7th May, as much as it is important to know what happened on the subsequent 2 days or 3 days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I accept your point entirely. I'm pretty sure the audience will agree with it as well. Let me go back for a moment to the Dawn report. It says Pakistan's Air Force Chief, Air Chief Marshal Zahir Ahmad Babur Sidhu, is a former commander of the Cobras. The Cobras is the popular name for the 15th Squadron of the Pakistani Air Force, and that's the squadron that is alleged to be responsible for downing 5 or 6 Indian Air Force planes. The Dawn report says Air Chief Marshal Zahir Ahmad Babur Sidhu is a former commander of the Cobras, and it adds that on the night of May the 7th, he was personally directing combat operations from the Pakistan Air Force's nerve center in Islamabad. Does that sound credible to you?
Okay, let me answer it this way. We know that Air Chief Marshal Sidhu has been in command of the Pakistan Air Force since March of 2021, and he will remain in command until the March of 2026. Now, in 2021, when he came, he became the air chief. There are two big things that have happened under his command. That is something that the Indian side, at least the Indian Air Force, should have known. And what were they? You see, after 5th August 2019, the next year in August 2020, the Chinese helped the Pakistan Air Force set up their Center of Artificial Intelligence and Computing, which was meant to take the electronic warfare to the next level, put artificial intelligence in electronic warfare, what is called cognitive electronic warfare. So he worked on that as the chief. He took it forward. And as I said, alongside that, he realized that this will not be enough. We need to make electromagnetic spectrum as a war domain. It should not remain a force multiplier. So he added the electromagnetic spectrum management system to that. So this is one combination he worked on. What is the next thing he did? In the Pakistan Air Force in March 2022, they got the J10s from the Chinese. And that is the time they started, the two air forces, PLAF and Pakistan Air Force, they started advanced exercises. Now, when I say advanced exercises, it basically means working on the digital ecosystem. That is what it is, where electronic warfare is there, where your integrated air and missile defense is there. So you have the whole ecosystem. And that was also under the command of ACM Sidhu. And this is the ecosystem is what is called the multi-domain operation. So when a chief has done two things, it stands to reason that when the D-Day comes, he should be there to oversee the rules of engagement. So there is no reason actually to disbelieve that ACM Sidhu was not there personally seeing as to how the Pakistan Air Force, or rather directing the rules of engagement of the Pakistan Air Force on the night of 6th, 7th. So I agree with this.
In fact, you're making an even deeper point. You're saying Air Chief Marshal Zahir Ahmad Babar Sidhu is the man who is responsible for what I would conversationally call the lethality of the Pakistan Air Force. He's helped it acquire a power and a capacity which it may not have had earlier.
Oh, absolutely. He's taken it to a new level. And that level we saw on the night of what they did, the Pakistan Air Force, how they went about. We saw all that. So he's taken it to a different level. There's no doubt about it.
Now, let me move to an article you wrote for The Wire on Sunday. That's just 3 days ago. You said, and I'm quoting you, the reality is that the number of IAF fighters lost does matter, as they serve as evidence that the IAF has not learned the key lesson from the 2019 Balakot air attack. And you described that lesson as the urgent need to improve electronic warfare capabilities. Now, you've explained in an earlier answer how critical this is. Why have they not learned this lesson? Did they not understand this was a lapse? Or did they simply believe that Pakistan didn't have the capacity it did? Was it underestimating Pakistan or not appreciating that they had a key lapse on their side?
See, what actually they were thinking, obviously, I'm not privy to that, but I can certainly give you my assessment here. What could have happened is, see, the first thing is that for some reason in the Indian Air Force, a lot of importance is given to getting the aircraft, the assets. Not much important, I have seen over the years, is given to the invisible capabilities which provide the add on to the assets. Like you see, preparing or creating a impregnable sort of digital ecosystem. That is one part. The second part is that the unfortunately the Indian Air Force also has been asking for a sub-conventional role. And it is not a coincidence that everything started in May of 2014 when Prime Minister Modi came to power. This is the time I remember the chief of the Indian Air Force was Air Chief Marshal Arup Raha. He was the first chief who started talking of that the Indian Air Force should be used in the sub-conventional role also, because they wanted to take the lead of the Indian Army, which has been doing the counter-terror operations since 1990. So they also wanted a bit of a glory. This is my assessment. So when you are now focused instead of the modern war, which is the higher level, but and all the subsequent chiefs, in fact, the chief who was there in Balakot and the chief after that, they all lauded that yes, we should Air Force should be used now freely in a sub-conventional role. But that was the wrong thing, because you're changing the mindset of the entire Air Force that look, this should be where you should focus. So the point is that these are those stray things. I'm just joining the dots. I don't know exactly what was going on in their mind, but these two things were certainly essential. That your focus should be not on the fighter on the platforms, but on the entire package. And your focus should be on the modern war. These are the two things.
And the important point you make is from 2014, starting with Air Chief Marshal Raha, subsequent chiefs, Arup Raha, starting with him, subsequent chiefs for the next 10 years have carried on the same thinking which you consider wrong thinking.
Each chief I have heard after Arup Raha talk about lauding, and all their analysts, unfortunately, you see, they have always been talking that the Air Force should be given a bigger role. We did a grand thing in Balakot. Look, the point is that whenever you do something, always I believe two things should be done in an appreciation. And those two things are: never consider that your opponent is weak, give him more capabilities than he actually has. And the second thing is, please understand that as a leader, you are taking a team, you are taking the entire Air Force with you. What that means is that you have to put the right things in their mind. Let me just make one small point. I still remember there was an Air Chief, uh, Indian Air Force Chief, SP Tyagi. Air Chief Marshal S.P. Tyagi. This was long back. I had met him, and he told me, uh, this is many years back. So he told me that I want to do single thing in my tenure as the Chief of the Air Force. And I asked him, what is that? He says, I want to just instill in the mind of the Indian Air Force the phrase strategic reach. See, when you think big, that if the Air Force is thinking of strategic reach, then it is thinking of the modern war. Well, of course, his successors who came, as I told you, that was a different story. And then, of course, it was an entirely different story once when Prime Minister Modi's government came into power.
Now, in that article that you wrote for The Wire, you also say, and once again I'm quoting you, after Operation Sindoor, the Indian military is more vulnerable in a hot war with Pakistan as its limitations in conducting campaigns across multiple war domains have been exposed. And you say these domains include air, land, the electromagnetic spectrum for electronic warfare, space, and cyber. To a layman, that sounds extremely serious. But will you tell me, how serious is it?
Well, it's extremely serious, and there are two issues involved here. Before I answer your question, the first thing is that if there is one lesson that has come out very clearly for us about the Pakistan military, both observing them very critically in Balakot and now in Sindoor, is that the Pakistan Air Force will be the lead service in the next war that they fight with India, which is not the case of the Indian military. Indian military still believes that the Indian army will be the lead service in war and not the Indian Air Force. I think this has to change. It should have changed in Balakot, but it should certainly change now because we are living in the times of new normal, which is on the edge of war. And the second reason is now you see, once again, the whole importance is given to the physical domains of war, land war, air war. No, in a modern war, the important thing is the virtual domains of war. And the most important domain is the electromagnetic spectrum. I just explained you in my assessment how much well the Pakistan Air Force has done in this electromagnetic spectrum. Because if you cannot compete in the electromagnetic spectrum, you lose the war. And why? Because that is where, you see, in war, information is the most important thing. That how do you retain your information and deny the information through electronic warfare by jamming of the enemy. And that is what electromagnetic spectrum is all about. So if you cannot be competitive in the electromagnetic spectrum, that means the war is over. There is no communication. And without communication, how exactly do you run the war? Similarly, cyber is another area. We have seen the Pakistanis, they did their cyber attacks during Operation Sindoor in Kashmir. So we have to understand cyber is non-attributable, and the Chinese are helping the Pakistanis. Chinese have the capability. What if tomorrow there is a war? The Chinese help them. It's non-attributable. Do cyber attacks all across India, and they will look like they're coming from Pakistan. Similarly, see space. Space, we have to seriously consider how do we have, like today the Pakistan military has, which is round the clock look capability, LOOK, because of the Beidou system, because of the Yogon satellites, which provide them, again Chinese satellites, which provide them electronic intelligence. You see, I still remember the Pakistani Air Force officer, Air Marshal Aurangzeb Ahmed, when he was giving a briefing to the international press, he explained to them that, look, we had the electronic identification, that is the signatures of the Indian Air Force fleet. And he said that there were 60 aircraft ramped up to 72 aircraft. So what is going on? Who was providing him all that? So this is the ecosystem. So the point here is space, cyber, electromagnetic spectrum are very critical things. We have to learn that. And last thing, if I may add here, is what is called the all domain operations, which is beyond the multi-domain operations. And what is that? The ISI of Pakistan will have a very big role to play. in the next war. So all these things, the lessons, the right lessons have to be learned.
I think in a very real sense, Pravin Sawhney, you answered my next question, but for the sake of those who are not as technically proficient as you, who don't understand these matters as well as you do, I'll still ask the question. Do you believe there are critical steps that the Air Force must take so that it's in a better position to take on the Pakistan Air Force and, if need be, the Chinese Air Force as well? And can you, in simple terms for laymen, spell out 2 or 3 of the top steps the Air Force must take?
See, first of all, I would suggest that let's keep the Chinese Air Force out of our discussion for the simple reason it is at a different level altogether, calls for a different discussion, and more important, there is no way that China will get into a war with India. And in fact, this is my first point. My first point is that please understand all this thinking that you were doing, that there is a possibility of an India-Pakistan war, or there is a possibility of a two-front war. We'll fight the war with China, we will fight the war with Pakistan simultaneously. All this is not happening. If there is one glimpse of the next war that we get from Sindoor is that it will be a one-front reinforced war, and that is where, which is that you will fight with Pakistan, China will back Pakistan without showing its hand. Now, as far as the Air Force is concerned, one of the things that I pointed out, please leave your sub-conventional role. This is very, very important. Number two, please improve your pilot to aircraft ratio. This is very important. And number three, for example, it is important as you build your ecosystem, or I don't want to comment on the ecosystem of the Indian Air Force for obvious reasons, but let me say that if they are getting the J-35A, which is a fifth generation aircraft, India also has to get a fifth generation aircraft. There are only two sources where you can get it. Either you can take more Rafales. In fact, Jay Shankar is already their external affairs minister in France. Well, I'm assuming that he'll be talking about the Rafales with them. The problem with the Rafale is that it is on Link 16. It is a NATO aircraft. They will not share their source codes with you. So you need a source code which will help you in your ecosystem. Then you need production capabilities of the fifth generation aircraft. Then you need, let me be very honest. The only country I can see is Russia. Russia is our traditional friend. They have offered us Sukhoi 57. They have offered production. They have offered the source codes. They have offered GLONASS. They have said we'll help you with your own fifth generation aircraft, indigenous, which is advanced medium combat aircraft called AMCA. Then they have a lot of experience in UAVs. We have seen in Ukraine, so they can help in manned unmanned teaming. So the point here is, Karan, that this whole Atmanirbharta thing is very good, but you need peace for that first in the region. To do Atmanirbharta, this is the time we are in a new normal. New normal. So we have to now prepare and see that we have all the required capabilities, at least for the Indian Air Force.
We're coming to the end of this interview, but I must ask you 2 further questions. In the light of Operation Sindoor, and in the light of any future Indo-Pakistan war that could happen, do you think that the structural reforms started by General Rawat when he was Chief of Defence Staff and now continued by General Chauhan when he succeeded General Rawat are still relevant? Or do you believe they need to be reviewed?
No, I've been arguing for a long time, and now there is evidence. Operation Sindoor is the evidence. They don't need to be reviewed, they need to be put in the dustbin. And the reason for that is there are a couple of things we noticed in Operation Sindoor. One is that the Indian Army will not have a lead role. Then there will be nothing called the front line or the rear line. It will be a combat zone. We have seen that because of the missiles. Okay, so in fact, a reorganization has to be done. In fact, I would even go that why don't you start now thinking the situation as it existed in the 1971 war, where we had the entire Western sector one commander called the Western Theater Commander, Army Commander. Why I'm saying that is because the battlefield, the entire battle space, there will be transparency. There is no way that you can even hide your command and control infrastructure. All you can have perhaps is movable advanced headquarters. I don't want to go in the details, but the point I'm making is very simple, that Fook number one, first of all, this theaterization can wait. In fact, it is not required at all because the game has changed. And what is the game today? The game is total transparency of the battlefield, build your virtual domain capabilities. That is the game. Once you've done all that, once you've reviewed the role of the Indian Army, the role of the Indian Air Force, got your virtual domain capabilities, then you look at a new structure altogether. This is 25 years old. This was suggested in 2001 by the Kargil committee, and after that, you see, that is where this thing is coming from. This CDS also, and this whole thing is coming from there. Theaterization. It is meaningless for the next war. That is my
I
point.
noticed
So,
what you said.
yeah.
I noticed what you said, and I'll repeat it for the audience. The plans for theaterization, pursued first by General Rawat and now by General Chauhan, should be thrown into the dustbin. Those are your precise words. And
Yes.
in the light of that comment, let me put this to you. A couple of hours before you and I went live today, NDTV reported, quoting sources who are unnamed, that the government has decided no committee will be set up to review Operation Sindoor. In the light of all that you've told me, the lessons that need to be learned, the plans for theaterization that need to be dustbin, is it wise that no committee to review Operation Sindoor will be set up? Or is it complacency?
No, I think it's a completely wrong approach. In fact, what we have to look now is that if we want to build the virtual domains, if we want to bring the artificial intelligence into it, see, at the end of the day, we know that our primary threat is China. Even if China does not fight a war with us, it helps Pakistan. But we have to look at the capabilities of China first. And therefore, we not only need a committee, we need a committee which is built of civilian experts, of technocrats from the civil and the operational people, academia. Everything has to come together to assess what all happened in Operation Sindoor. Okay, you don't want to make a slight portion of it public. You want to keep it classified, but to say that we will not do that will be a fatal mistake to make, I believe.
A fatal mistake, as seriously as
Yes.
that.
Absolutely, I believe that it will be a fatal mistake. Operation Sindoor was a very serious thing. See, because unlike Balakot, where the Pakistan Air Force was caught off guard, because that operation happened, they didn't realize, they retaliated only the next day. They could take their counteraction. It was not the case this time. This time they were prepared. They were prepared for the 6th, 7th night. And in any case, the government didn't hide all that. Government didn't hide because we said there'll be mock drill, we will do this. So we were giving all the indications to them, and in any case, they had the satellites. The Bedu was there telling them what's going on.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Please finish. Please finish.
No, so what I'm saying is, it is a must, in the interest of India, that the government should institute a committee which should look very seriously and critically. So look, you can always laud your operations. Now that is called information warfare. Continue doing that. You have to see it critically because you have to prepare for what is coming next, whether it happens or it doesn't happen.
Pravin Sawhney, I think you've made a very powerful case, but I also thank you for having been willing to discuss the report first published in Dawn and then cited by our own magazine in India, The Week, about how many planes were down, the character and nature of those planes, and possibly how they were down. I'm extremely grateful to you for the time you've given me, for your thinking and for your analysis. Take care, and above all else, stay safe.
Thank you, Karan. Thank you very much for getting me on your program. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.